Throughout history, civilizations have grappled with the concept of debt. From the earliest days of trade and barter, the ancients understood that to owe was to be bound. In stone tablets and sacred texts, warnings echoed through the ages. Debt is shackle. Yet in the modern world, debt often feels invisible, abstract, a string of numbers, a line on a statement, an agreement signed and forgotten. But the truth remains unchanged. Debt, in its many forms, can quietly erode freedom, wealth, and peace of mind. Not all debt is created equal, but certain types have profound power to ruin lives. Today we examine these 4 forms of debt, their origins, their dangers, and the wisdom the ancients offered for those who would avoid their chains. To understand the gravity of debt, let us first consider its nature. Debt is not merely an obligation. It is a promise, a binding contract that reaches into the future and claims a portion of it. The ancients saw this with clarity. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform tablets recorded not only transactions, but warnings against excessive borrowing. In the book of Proverbs we read, "The borrower is slave to the lender." Ancient Greek philosophers cautioned that debt could lead to servitude, and in Rome, laws were written to protect citizens from the most dangerous forms of indebtedness. Even in Eastern traditions, Buddhist teachings encouraged living within one's means, warning that debt was a source of suffering. Despite these admonitions, debt has become a ubiquitous part of modern life. It is leveraged for homes, education, cars, businesses, and even daily expenses. Used wisely, debt can be a tool, a means to achieve goals, build wealth, and navigate financial challenges. But when misused, it transforms from tool to tyrant, dictating choices, limiting options, and constraining lives. Let us explore the 4 types of debt that, above all, threaten to ruin lives, and the ancient wisdom that can help us resist their temptations. The first type is consumer debt. This includes credit cards, personal loans, and installment payments for goods and services. In an age of instant gratification, consumer debt is the easiest to acquire and the hardest to escape. Credit cards promise convenience, rewards, and flexibility, but their true cost is often hidden in compounding interest rates and fees. The ancients had no credit cards, but they understood the peril of borrowing for consumption. In ancient Egypt, debt could lead to indentured servitude. In India, the laws of Manu advised moderation and warned that borrowing for luxury invited ruin. Consumer debt is insidious because it preys on emotion. The thrill of a new purchase, the comfort of a well-furnished home, the pleasure of a night out, all can be had with a swipe or a click, with payment deferred to another day. But as balances grow, so does the burden. Interest compounds, payments become harder to meet, and the shackles tighten. The average household with credit card debt carries thousands of dollars in balances, often paying more in interest than for the items themselves. The stress and anxiety that result can strain relationships, impact health, and undermine happiness. The second type is payday and predatory loans. These are loans offered at exorbitant interest rates, often to those in desperate circumstances. The ancients were not unfamiliar with predatory lending. In Hebrew law, usury, lending at unreasonably high interest, was condemned. In the Code of Hammurabi, limits were set on how much interest could be charged. Yet today, payday lenders flourish in communities where financial insecurity is most acute. Their advertisements promise quick cash and easy approval, targeting those facing emergencies or living paycheck to paycheck. The reality of payday loans is grim. Interest rates can exceed 400% annually. Borrowers are often unable to pay off the initial loan and must roll it over, incurring new fees and deeper debt. The cycle is vicious. Desperation leads to borrowing. Borrowing leads to debt. Debt leads to more desperation. The ancient warning resounds. Debt is shackle, and predatory loans are among the strongest links in its chain. They strip away autonomy, trap borrowers in cycles of poverty, and devastate families and communities. The third type is auto and bad asset loans. These are loans used to purchase depreciating assets, cars, electronics, furniture, and other goods that lose value over time. Unlike investments or properties that may appreciate, these items are worth less the moment they leave the showroom. The ancients rarely borrowed for such purposes. Their debts were for land, livestock, or tools that could yield returns. In modern times, loans for cars and consumer goods are common, with terms stretching for years and interest rates varying widely. The danger of auto and bad asset loans is twofold. First, the borrower owes more than the asset is worth. If the car is totaled or sold, it may not cover the remaining balance, leading to a deficiency that must still be paid. Second, the monthly payments reduce cash flow, limiting the ability to save, invest, or respond to emergencies. Over time, these loans accumulate, crowding out opportunities for financial growth and stability. The ancient Greeks spoke of money that breeds money, debt used for productive ends. Bad asset loans are the opposite. They consume wealth rather than create it. The fourth type is student and educational debt. Of all the forms of debt, this can be the most seductive. Education is often seen as an investment, a path to higher earnings, greater knowledge, and a better life. In ancient China, scholars were revered, and learning was highly valued. But even then, sages warned against sacrificing future well-being for present ambition. In the modern era, the cost of education has soared, and student loans have become a rite of passage for millions. Student debt is unique because it is tied not to a physical asset but to human capital, skills, qualifications, and potential. When managed wisely, it can yield great rewards. But when taken on recklessly, or for costly degrees with uncertain prospects, it can become a lifelong burden. In many countries, student loans are difficult or impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. Monthly payments persist for decades, impacting credit scores, delaying milestones like homeownership or family formation, and breeding anxiety and regret. The ancients would counsel caution, weigh the cost, measure the benefit, and borrow only what can be repaid. These four types of debt, consumer, predatory, bad asset, and student, can, each in their own way, ruin lives. But the story does not end there. The ancients did not merely warn, they offered guidance for those who would avoid debt's shackles. The first lesson is moderation. In all things, balance is key. Borrow only what is necessary, and never for fleeting desires. The Stoics taught that happiness comes not from possessions, but from virtue and wisdom. The Buddha advised contentment with little. The Torah counseled generosity and warned against coveting what others have. To resist the pull of consumer debt, cultivate gratitude and practice restraint. The second lesson is diligence. Know the terms of every loan, the interest rates, the fees, the consequences of default. In ancient Rome, contracts were read aloud and witnessed to ensure understanding. In modern times, fine print can conceal traps and risks. Before borrowing, calculate the true cost, not just the monthly payment, but the total to be repaid, the impact on future plans, and the alternatives available. The third lesson is prudence. Borrow for assets that produce wealth, not for those that consume it. The ancients invested in land, livestock, and trade. They avoided borrowing for luxuries or status. In today's world, this means prioritizing investments in education, business, or property that can yield returns. Avoid loans for depreciating goods and seek out alternatives, used cars, saving up for purchases, or simply doing without. The fourth lesson is planning. Debt is a claim on future income. Before borrowing, consider the stability of your earnings, the likelihood of unforeseen expenses, and the risk of changes in circumstances. The wise plan for contingencies, set aside savings, and avoid overextending themselves. In ancient times, families pooled resources, supported one another, and avoided isolation. In the modern era, build an emergency fund, seek advice from trusted mentors, and consider insurance or other protections. The fifth lesson is action. If debt has already taken hold, do not despair. The ancients told stories of redemption, forgiveness, and second chances. In ancient Israel, the Jubilee year was a time when debts were forgiven and slaves set free. Today, there are paths to recovery: debt counseling, consolidation, negotiation, and budgeting. Face the problem squarely, seek help if needed, and commit to change. Beyond these personal lessons, there are broader truths. Debt is not merely a financial issue, it is a social and moral one. The ancients understood that excessive debt could destroy families, undermine communities, and threaten entire societies. In Athens, debt crises led to reforms and revolutions. In Rome, indebtedness contributed to social unrest. Today, household debt levels have reached historic highs in many countries, fueling anxiety and instability. The choices individuals make about debt reverberate outward, shaping the future for all. It is also important to recognize that not all debt is created equal. Some debt is productive, enabling growth and opportunity. Business loans, mortgages for homes, and modest student loans for valuable degrees can open doors. The key is to distinguish between debt as tool and debt as shackle. Evaluate each borrowing decision carefully and ask, will this debt help build a better future, or will it limit freedom and opportunity? In conclusion, the ancients warned that debt is shackle, and their wisdom endures. 4 types of debt: consumer, payday, and predatory, bad asset, and student, have extraordinary power to ruin lives. They erode freedom, consume wealth, and breed anxiety. But their chains can be avoided, and if necessary, broken. Practice moderation, diligence, prudence, planning, and action. Cultivate contentment, seek understanding, invest wisely, and prepare for the unexpected. Debt, like fire, can warm or destroy. Handle it with care, respect its power, and remember the lessons of those who came before. Let their warnings guide you. Let their wisdom protect you. And let your future be shaped not by the shackles of debt, but by the choices you make, the virtues you cultivate, and the freedom you preserve. For in the end, the greatest wealth is not found in possessions or accounts, but in the ability to live life unbound, secure, content, and free.